At 9:03 on the night of Saturday, December 22, 2018, a section of the southwestern flank of the Anak Krakatoa volcano collapsed into the Sunda Strait between the Indonesian islands of Java and Sumatra. The collapse lasted between 2 and 3 minutes. It moved 240 million cubic meters of rock and volcanic material into the water at debris avalanche velocity. The wave it produced reached more than 40 meters in height near the collapse zone. As it traveled outward through the Sunda Strait, it attenuated, but not enough. It reached some coastal communities within minutes of the collapse. At many locations, the first indication that anything had happened was the wave itself. Indonesia's tsunami early warning system registered nothing actionable. No significant earthquake had preceded the collapse. The sensors that the warning system depended on, seismometers calibrated to detect and characterize earthquake-generated tsunamis, had nothing to measure. At the Tanjung Lesung Beach Resort in Banten Province, on the southwestern coast of Java, the Indonesian pop band 17 was performing a Christmas season concert. Concertgoers were seated on the beach. The wave arrived with the music still playing. Footage recorded by multiple attendees, footage that circulated globally within hours, shows the stage being overtaken by the water. Performers and crew knocked down, the structure collapsing. In the days that followed, the death toll was confirmed at 430. More than 7,200 people were injured. More than 46,000 were displaced. The signal that could have saved them had been recorded in satellite data for 12 years. Nobody was reading it. To understand what happened in the Sunda Strait on December 22, 2018, you have to understand the specific geological inheritance that Anak Krakatoa carries, and why it carries a uniquely unstable one. The 1883 eruption of Krakatoa is one of the most catastrophic volcanic events in recorded human history. The explosion, which occurred on an island in the center of the Sunda Strait, was heard approximately 5,000 kilometers away, as far as the island of Rodrigues near Mauritius and the Australian city of Perth. It killed more than 36,000 people, most of them through the series of tsunamis it generated as pyroclastic flows entered the sea. It destroyed most of the original Krakatoa island, leaving a caldera on the seafloor. In 1927, a new island emerged from that caldera, Anak Krakatoa, the child of Krakatoa. It grew steadily from a submarine seamount to a volcanic island, reaching a peak elevation of approximately 320 meters before December 2018 through 90 years of nearly continuous eruptive activity. That eruptive activity is what made the southwestern flank of Anak Krakatoa inherently unstable. Active stratovolcanoes grow rapidly by piling new eruptive material onto their flanks, often at rates that outpace the consolidation of that material into stable rock. The volcanic edifice accumulates faster than it settles, and the geometry of the Anak Krakatoa cone, steep, asymmetric, sitting on a saturated volcanic platform in the sea, meant that the southwestern flank was subject to persistent gravitational stress that the rate of eruption was continuously amplifying. By 2018, Anak Krakatoa had been in an active eruption phase for approximately 3 months. Eruptions occurred multiple times per week. Each eruption deposited additional material on the flanks, particularly the southwestern flank, which was the side most exposed to the sea and most subject to wave undercutting at its base. The process was accelerating the instability that had been quietly building for years. At 9:03 p.m. on December 22nd, the threshold was crossed. The southwestern flank failed in a single rapid event. The 240 million cubic meter landslide entered the sea in 2 to 3 minutes. A seismic station on the island of Java recorded the collapse as a signal, but not one that any automated warning system interpreted as a tsunami precursor. The signal looked like a landslide, not an earthquake. The warning systems were not calibrated to respond to landslides. The tsunami propagated outward from the collapse zone at open water speed. In the Sunda Strait, where the geography is constrained and the distances are measured in tens of kilometers, travel times to nearby coasts were measured in minutes. At Legon Beach in Banten, one of the closest populated areas, the wave arrived less than 5 minutes after the collapse. The communities hit hardest were those on the southwestern coast of Java in Pandeglang and Serang regencies, and those on the coast of Lampung province in southern Sumatra. Run-up heights reached 13 meters at some locations. At Tanjung Lesung, the site of the concert, it was approximately 5 meters, enough to sweep a concert audience off a beach. The footage from Tanjung Lesung has entered scientific literature as the most direct visual documentation ever captured of a volcanic tsunami arriving at a populated coast during a public event. The images, shot from multiple angles by multiple concertgoers on phones and cameras, show the stage area being inundated, the structure collapsing, the crowd scattered. Bassist Herman Sikumbang of the band 17 was among those killed. Singer Rifian Fajarsha survived, but his wife Dia Puspita Rarasati did not. The visual record of the event is its own documentation of what a zero-warning volcanic tsunami means in practice. The scientific consensus that followed the 2018 event was not that the collapse was undetectable. It was that the relevant data existed and had not been analyzed in real time. The distinction is critical. All major tsunami warning systems currently in operation, including Indonesia's INATU's, Japan's JMA system, and the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center, operate on the same fundamental principle: detect a large earthquake, characterize its source parameters, model the expected tsunami, issue a warning. This framework is effective for the earthquakes that produce most Pacific and Indian Ocean tsunamis. It is ineffective for non-seismogenic tsunamis, events generated by volcanic flank collapses, submarine landslides, asteroid impacts, or caldera collapses that do not produce a sufficiently large earthquake signal. In these cases, by the time a coastal tide gauge registers an anomalous sea level change, the fallback detection mechanism, the wave has frequently already struck the nearest communities. The satellite data that could have warned of the Anak Krakatoa collapse was published in a peer-reviewed journal in November 2024, 6 years after the event. Researchers Young Cheol Kim, Christelle Wathier, and Thomas Walter, working across Penn State University and the GFZ German Research Center for Geosciences, used interferometric synthetic aperture radar, INSAR, data from the European Space Agency's Sentinel satellites to reconstruct the motion of the Anak Krakatoa southwestern flank between 2006 and 2018. Their finding, the flank had accumulated approximately 15 meters of cumulative slip over that 12-year period, sliding slowly, continuously, and at a pace that accelerated detectably in the months immediately before the December 2018 collapse. The final acceleration phase, visible in the archived satellite data, occurred during the same period when Anak Krakatoa's eruption rate was increasing. The connection between the eruption activity and the flank motion was present in the data. Nobody was processing the data in real time. The research team recommended deploying continuous real-time INSAR monitoring on the Anak Krakatoa southwestern flank and on similar volcanic island flanks worldwide. The technology exists. It is commercially and technically available. The cost of deploying satellite monitoring specifically on the Anak Krakatoa flank is a fraction of the economic damage caused by a single repetition of the 2018 event. The deployment status of that monitoring as of early 2026 has not been publicly confirmed by Indonesian or international authorities. Anak Krakatoa is currently at alert level 3, one step below the maximum, as of January 2026. It is actively erupting. The exclusion zone around the volcano extends 5 kilometers in all directions. The same southwestern flank that slid 15 meters over 12 years and then collapsed in 3 minutes on December 22, 2018, is being rebuilt by the ongoing eruptions. New volcanic material is accumulating on the same geometrically unstable position it occupied before the collapse. Whether the rebuilt flank is depositing material in a more stable configuration than the original, or whether the same slow slip process is beginning its next cycle, is something that satellite INSAR data will eventually resolve, if someone is reading it. The communities on the southwestern coast of Java and the coast of Lampung in southern Sumatra are the same communities that experienced the 2018 event. Approximately 60 to 70 million people live within 100 kilometers of the Sunda Strait. The INATU's warning system has been upgraded since 2018, and discussions about adding detection capacity for non-seismogenic events have been ongoing. But the infrastructure for detecting a volcanic flank collapse tsunami in sufficient time to warn the nearest communities in the Sunda Strait is not yet operational. There are 3 things scientists are tracking now. The first is the southwestern flank motion at the rebuilt Anak Krakatoa. The most direct action that could reduce future risk is deploying real-time satellite monitoring specifically to detect whether the new flank is beginning to slip in the same pattern as its predecessor. The science for doing this exists. The recommendation to do this has been published in scientific literature. The implementation is the gap. The second is the eruption rate. The faster material is deposited on the flanks, the faster the flank geometry evolves toward instability. Alert Level 3 in January 2026 means significant eruptive activity is ongoing. Scientists monitoring the volcano are tracking whether the eruption rate matches or exceeds the 2018 pre-collapse pattern. The third is the broader lesson for other volcanic island systems. The GFZ team that studied the 2018 collapse has stated explicitly that similar events could herald themselves on other active volcanic islands. They specifically named Stromboli in Italy, Montserrat in the Caribbean, and unnamed volcanic islands in the Pacific and Mediterranean. The methodology for detecting pre-collapse flank motion using satellite INSAR data, validated by the Anak Krakatoa analysis, could be applied to all of these systems. The question is whether it is applied before or after the next collapse. The concert footage from December 22, 2018 is what most people remember about this event. The science that followed is what the next event depends on. Subscribe to stay ahead of what's coming.